Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to the session about the Kantara Initiative in 2024. I'm Kay Chopard. I'm the Executive Director at the Kantara Initiative, and we are thrilled to have you here, and we're excited to tell you about some of the wonderful things that we're doing. With me today are several speakers, as you can see, and I'll just introduce them by name. They can tell you more about themselves when it's their turn to talk. Lindsay Adams is the Assurance Program Manager for the U.S. Assurance Program. So she's full-time on staff, like I am. Next to her is John Wunderlich. John is the chair of the Privacy Enhancing Mobile Credentials Work Group, and he'll talk a little bit about their work. Next is Andrew Hughes. Andrew is a man with many hats, probably the most prominent for the Kantara Initiative is that he is the chairman of our board of directors, and he also chairs some of our work groups. And last but not least is Jordan Burris. Jordan is also on the board of directors, and Jordan also heads our DEIA, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Initiative. And so we'll all be talking about various things that Kantara is doing this year. Let me see if I can. So I just introduced everyone. There's our pictures, who we are, and the various hats that we all wear. This is also, just to give you a sense, this is our board of directors. The board of directors are elected from the full membership. The Kantara Initiative is a nonprofit association. And in addition, we have a UK certification body that is also owned and operated by the Kantara Initiative from the U.S. And we have some other board members in the room, Mike McGrath, who is here in the front row. And I don't think there's any other board members today.
Andy Hindle's a bit too busy.
And Andy Hindle is also on our board of directors, too, but he is a little busy right now. This is just to give you a sense, a little bit about the staff. As I mentioned, Lindsay and I are full-time, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. Lindsay is based in South Carolina. Also here in the U.S. is Amanda Gay. She really is the coordinator for all of our work groups and for our membership. She's based in Georgia, so she's here in the U.S. Then we have several staff who are based in the U.K. Most recently, David Nutbrown, who is head of our regulatory compliance, and James Keenan, head of our certification delivery. They're both based in the UK, and they are leading a lot of our accreditation under the ISO standards and doing a lot of our audits there, but we'll also be working with the US program. Ashley Robert is the program manager, so Lindsay's counterpart in the UK. Karen Bright, who is our communications lead, happens to be based in the UK, although her focus is Kantara as a whole and really primarily US. And then Armin Catrain, who is our head of information technology. So the staff has grown. For any of you who came last year, you might have seen there was just a couple of us, and we keep expanding. To tell you a little bit about Kantara, I guess I'd like to share with you our vision and our mission. And some of you, because I know some of you know us well, probably know some of this. But for those of you who may not be familiar, just to let you know, so the vision for Kantara is that equitable and transparent exchange of identity and personal data for mutual value. And our mission is to grow and fulfill the market for trustworthy uses of identity and personal data. And in many ways, what you'll see about us, I think, is that we are very much focused on the industry and the marketplace. And so we have more companies who are members than necessarily individuals. And a lot of our focus in our initiatives, you'll see, is really driven by what are the market needs and what can we do to be helpful to the market. Next is more about the priorities of the board and the leadership of Kantara, and I'd like to ask Andrew Hughes to talk about that.
Thanks, Kay. So this year with the board, we decided to do basically a refresh of our mission, vision, objectives, all that wonderful stuff that holds the organization together. Excuse me. And what we decided to do, led by Eve Mailer, is come up with a set of organizational beliefs to help explain what Kantara Initiative is about. Because most of us experience Kantara Initiative in very narrow slices. You might be a company offering credential services, and you'll encounter the credential service program. You might be working on pre-standardization of deepfake threats to identity verification, which I am, and that might be how you're experiencing it. So we tried to do a more broad view of the entire organization and what we as a group believe in, to help people relate to what we do and hopefully attract more members to the organization. So we've organized our beliefs around people, organizations, assurance, and trying to figure out what that missing link is. So the beliefs are, we believe in empowering people with tools to help them make risk decisions. Organizations, we believe in enabling organizations with tools to help them mitigate the risks of trust failure. And we believe that simplification of assurance requires depth of experience. So those three things are intended to be empowering. We won't fix the problems for organizations or people, but we help them understand the situation, give them meaningful tools, guidance, certifications to deal with the situations that they encounter in everyday life. And altogether, we do believe that the human to digital binding process is missing. Everyone's working on this wonderful digital identity, verifiable credentials, digital wallets, but protecting them with passwords. Well, using a password to link to a person isn't all that great. So we're looking for higher assurance, easier to use, more convenient ways of connecting the person to their stuff, their digital stuff. Slide. So we're arranged around three primary work areas. We have the community groups, the discussion groups, and work groups. Every association has work groups. We're like-minded individuals and corporations that develop things like the consent receipt specification, for example. DEIA is starting up a work group that we'll hear about later on. Really ways to advance Kantara's mission and set the lead for industry in those slices. Members, partners, and liaisons. We don't exist if we have no members, being a membership organization. It's really to spread the word, extend the message, and get the rich conversations that we have in our community groups. And then assurance programs, which has really become the commercial core of the nonprofit corporation Kantara. Our flagship product is certification to NIST 863, so that federal agency and state agency purchasers know that they're getting a high-quality credential product from a vendor that is fit for purpose and fulfills the requirements of 863, which is very important for the U.S. federal agencies and state agencies. We'll hear more about that, and also a new assurance program in the UK, Digital Identity Attribute Trust Framework, I think. I can never remember what it is. Similar in nature to the 863 certification. It's a requirement for vendors offering identity proofing for various programs in the UK government. They can't do business without it, and we offer the certification service for them. And we're going to do a quick round of introductions to the different work groups. We have postcards at the back if you want to grab one about each of these groups. They're very exciting.
With trustworthy QR codes.
They're trustworthy QR codes, I must say. Over to Jordan.
All right, I get the pleasure of kicking this one off. So for the DEIA initiative with Kantara in particular, we wanted to take the approach to first look internally and try to better understand throughout our vendor community and those that were working with us what DEIA really meant to us. And from our perspective, the biggest thing was looking at the solutions that we brought to market and more importantly, how they better served customers overall, right? We believe that just in general, everyone should be able to access the services that they intend to. What we needed to do is try to demystify DEIA, because you say that, you ask that to 10 different people, you'll get probably 10 different answers. as to what that actually means, and to try to get something that the entire industry could rally around, but then not only the industry, but also the service providers, the relying parties, anyone who is engaging is part of the digital identity conversation. So if you go to the next slide. Now, we've been busy over the prior years building a number of things, we'll say structurally, in order to be able to have the conversations that we really need to have today. But generally, when we got started back in, we'll say 22, 23 timeframe, what we heard from not only the relying parties out there, but also the industry, is that there was a lot of inconsistency, both in how we talked, but then in how we executed. Right, much of even the sales materials that came out from the community would say equity meant this or equity meant that. One of the things that we highlighted is that we needed to build more of a consensus related to the terminology. Now, we do believe that there's an opportunity for Kantara to be basically the tip of the spear in helping to coordinate and convene a lot of the expertise, not only within the industry community, but looking at academia, looking at the nonprofit space, and then agencies that choose to participate in order to basically coalesce around what that correct terminology is going to be. There's certain things that we're working on as well, such as building out catalogs of these artifacts, these terminologies as we go forward. There's also a gap that was identified around measurement, saying that, hey, what does it actually mean if someone is more equitable in a solution, right? That the term more and equitable was really hard to quantify, right? Is it that's more people for the identity proofing space were able to pass, or for those that were using authenticators, that it was easier for people to get through the process of authenticating? Ultimately, what it identified for us was that we needed to help define and drive measurement, right? Be able to come down and get down to things that everyone could rally around and orient towards. What could we be doing to better measure outcomes for solutions, and then tie that to every vendor or every relying party that gets to engage within the ecosystem. There's also the opportunity for us in this space, as we're going through and we're talking about what this may look like in practice, and we try to get this consensus, unified effort around it. What would it look like within standards bodies? Because of course we all love reading NIST standards, and I don't see any of my friends in the room, but as they know, I always say, I love it when they say you should do this, and yet there is no clarifying guidance as to what it means to do the thing. So for an example, in the recent revision, they said solutions should be more equitable. Okay, thank you. That helps. And so what we wanted to do is to be able to help provide more recommendations and guidance as to what that could mean, understanding the various principles and parameters associated with the work that's coming up, right? It's the intent to be able to give the government input into their development process, so that way they can make the more informed decision for standards as they go forward. And then generally, the last thing was highlighted was that community building, right? It was necessary. And what that means for us is understanding that there are a number of threads that are ongoing today around equity and what needs to evolve and enhance. There's other nonprofits that are at work here, things that think of like Women in Identity, et cetera, that have different pieces of the puzzle. It's important for us as Kantara to be basically acting as the group to bring everything together, so that way you can make sure that there is kind of the outcome-based product at the end of the day. This also includes understanding what the community at large needs, and where there is gaps in the remaining solutions or gaps in the products that have been put out today. And so one of the things that I do want to highlight as part of that process, what we do annually is we actually release a survey. And as part of that survey, we try to take a summary. We collect input from service providers, relying parties, and others, in order to get a perspective on where there are challenges to date, or things that we need to solve for. Now, across 2023, there were a number of things that were identified. Now, of course, this is a snapshot, so as not to bore everyone with all the data that was collected, but generally we can say that largely it was a North American presence. We did have, of course, a couple of countries with respondents as well. We did see that from the vendor community, they viewed DEI as a key to improving competitiveness. But then we also saw that for various reasons, or various pieces of that puzzle, a lot of them were, I will say, focusing on different aspects of what it meant to invest in improvements, or where to start and where to begin in making those changes in particular, right? We go to the next slide, and there you go. And so that's where you get into, it was a 70% actively investing in DEIA. However, there was ranges in the amounts that they were investing. There were differences in whether or not they could determine whether or not there was an ROI associated with it, whether or not their focus in DEIA should be around fraud prevention and detection. There was a whole host of areas and issues for us to look at. And so one of the things that we wanted to do as we go forward is to basically evaluate how do we take results such as this and use this to focus in our efforts, which is what led to the work that we're doing or we're going to be executing now throughout the rest of 24. And I think the next slide, I'm not sure if it's still there. Yeah, we're moving on to privacy one. So the only thing I would say is that, let's see, they're going to steal the mic from me in a minute, is that we do have another survey that will be coming out soon. Now we're in the final touches of putting that together. And so I would say stay tuned from us. And then on the Kantara website, you'll see that go live here shortly in order to collect continued feedback as we start to inform what happens in 25.
Thanks. So Andrew talked about organizing in work groups and discussion groups. And the discussion groups produce reports, and work groups will produce requirements that may lead to standards that could be certifiable. So some years ago, when the MDL 18013-5 was in flight, we started a discussion group for privacy and information management. I forget my own damn acronym. PIMDL, Privacy and Information Management for Driver's Licenses, I think. But it addresses privacy for MDL ecosystems, which is MDocs and the 18013-5. And that's available on the Kantara site for download and reading. That then led to the creation of a work group, which is still in flight, that I chair. And it's become a little more generalized, privacy-enhancing mobile credentials to allow for various forms of wallets, verifiable credentials, other systems of that sort. We've earlier this year produced an implementer's guidance report, basically saying we think this is where this is going. If you're in the space and you're building systems or solutions, take a look at the implementer's guidance report and say, oh, okay, when we eventually get to requirements and the ability to certify, if we align with that report, hopefully we won't be far off from meeting the requirements. Right now, we're rolling through developing various requirements that would be necessary and arm wrestling those through the site. And I'm just looking at the time here. This is tricky, right? Because a lot of us in this space are used to writing technical requirements. But privacy, this is a socio-technical problem, right? We've gotten increasingly better at doing zero trust in the sort of the normal trust triangle between relying party, verifier, zero trust, high cryptographic assurance, all of that stuff to makes it a really good, secure, private, by one definition, a private system. But the outside trust, which is between the issuing organization, the person who has the credential or the driver's license, and the doorman at the bar that he's trying to get into, the trust or the bar itself, there is no trust there. None of the stuff that we build technically is adding to that trust. And that's the socio-technical problem. We're trying to figure out how do you build requirements such that if we end up issuing a Kantara trust mark to a verifier or a verifier device or an issuer or a provider of a wallet or something like that, that has meaningful assurance. The users will never look at it, but that it will be useful so that the people in industry can say, okay, we can do that, and that does two things. One, it gives us all a common dialogue on how to deal with those wicked hard problems, and two, if there's a breach, if there's a complaint, if there's an issue with a regulator or a civil suit, having that assurance is your first line of defense, saying, look, we've already thought about this and we've done that. So I ask if you're in this space or you're interested with socio-technical problems or MDOCs or VCs and their uses in the wild, please come and join the group. Oh yeah, and right. Come to my session tomorrow, 11:05, Joshua 5, I think. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I got to stand. I can't talk when my feet don't touch the ground. Okay, so I'm chair of the Identity Assurance Work Group. It's one of our flagship work groups. The Identity Assurance Work Group, as I hope you're reading behind me, we're a group of vendors, assessors, auditors, people experienced in the federated identity industry, and we manage assessment criteria by which credential service provider companies are assessed in our Kantara Assurance program. We take a look at other frameworks around the world. We regularly comment on other frameworks. Other countries and organizations know that there's a center of expertise within the Identity Assurance Work Group, so they come and ask us. Right now, our work is focused on US NIST 863. It's version 3 right now. Our service assessment criteria have been around for version 3 since it was released, I guess, something like that, whenever that year was. We've been preparing for version 4 for a while. It's been delayed a little bit, but we're still ready for it. So we've been taking on side topics that we know are coming out based on the consultations that NIST has done. We're exploring other options. We know that 863 doesn't cover certain topics like digital evidence of identity particularly well. It's very good with document-based proof of identity, but it doesn't really deal with digital, and that's where we all are already as vendors in the space. So we try to influence our friends at NIST to push against the boundaries that they have, because they represent and they must represent their stakeholders at the U.S. federal level. We try to help them and inform them of things that we're seeing in our commercial environment as vendors. Kay has great relationships with other countries and other schemes, so we bring that into the mix and talk about it. You would never know from our calls because we're always talking about the criteria. Lindsay, what are we talking about right now? 63A number 180?
For months.
Yeah, months and months and months. But the discussions are good. What is 180 about anyways? It's the combinations of evidence that you're permitted to use to reach level 2 assurance for identity. Incredibly boring unless you manage a program that issues credentials based on level 2. Every choice that we make in the Identity Assurance work group could cost you money when you're proofing people out on the street. How you collect up the various bits of evidence, and as John mentioned, it could also save you money. That's why people participate, is because we've got the tension, we've got the right people in the room, we have the attention of organizations like NIST, the UK Assurance Program, and others, that I like to believe that the discussions actually matter. Like they're making a difference in the real world. So anyways, that's the Identity Assurance Work Group. It's my favorite work group, except for, that's the discussion group. So this one, this is a new discussion group, as John mentioned before. Discussion groups study an emerging area, figure out what's going on, and decide whether or not there's something to be done. Is there work to be done in this area? I used to work for Ping, and who was at Identiverse last year? Do you remember Andre's keynote where he came out, sat on a couch, and didn't say a word, and his deep fake voice and presentation was playing in the background? it's like, oh, hey, this is a business opportunity for businesses that have to do identity verification. This is a big problem. Or it's a big differentiator. Let's start a discussion group. So spun it up, got some people interested, got some sponsorship going, got new members going, and we've been working since September. We got the 19 voting members, they're actually active, so they show up on basically every weekly call. Everyone's got an informed opinion. It's great. And we debate stuff, like what is a deepfake, actually? Is it everything that's fake? Is it just video? Is it just photo? What is it? So we figure out what we think it means and write it down. What we've been doing is collating a curated set of factual documents. So we're not taking vendor material, really. I mean, some of it's really, really good. Most of it's sales and marketing. We're looking for academic research, other presentations, and filtering it through our collective experience to find out, ironically, what's real and what's fake out there in the world. For documentation about how AI works, how deepfakes work, who's vulnerable, why they're vulnerable, and how to fix it, and what's coming next. On Thursday, Kantara has got a meeting room booked, 8 a.m. somewhere in this building. And we'll find out where it is. You'll have to miss some exciting keynotes on Thursday morning to come to talk with us as we figure out what we're going to do with the outputs of the discussion group. So discussion groups don't always end up in work groups. We've had them. They produce an incredible report, excellent report, but there's no work for Kantara to do in the space. This one there is, because we do certification programs. And imagine if you could get certified as a company. Imagine if you could use a company that was certified as having actually effective, like proven effective mitigation or prevention of deepfake attacks, right? Who doesn't want to save $25 million that your financial guy transfers to some fraudster's bank account because some fake Zoom account, some fake deepfake Zoom people tell him to? Look it up. It happened in Hong Kong like 2 months ago. So there's a market for knowledge about this. We're building the curated database of factual stuff. We're self-seeding it. So the presentations we make about deepfakes and threats to ID proof and verification will go back into the knowledge base. We are going to decide what to do. So is there a set of requirements out there that companies should meet to demonstrate that they're doing the right thing for proofing and verification as it goes to deepfakes and AI threats? No? We'll write them. Yes? We'll adopt them, create a certification program about them, and offer it to the market. It's needed. There's many, many reports coming out saying that it's really bad out there, and we're going to try to see if we can fix it. Remember the belief stuff? Tools for organizations to get their mission done. That's what we're building in there. And with that...
And just to let everyone know, if you're interested in talking about this more, we're meeting on Thursday morning in Copperleaf 6.
And the expo.
And also, absolutely. We'll tell you where to find us in the expo hall next. Did you want to come up here? Or?
Yeah, I'll actually. No, actually, I was an educator before this, so standing behind a podium just makes more sense to me than sitting out there. But I am Lindsay Adams. I am the program manager for the U.S. Assurance Program. Some of you I know because you're already kind of involved with us. But for those of you that don't, here's a little bit about kind of our bread and butter, which is our assurance program here in the U.S. It's based off of, that is a interesting color on there. Sorry, guys. It doesn't look like that on the actual computer screen. So Andrew mentioned a little bit before about the Identity Assurance Work Group, and that is truly the work group that works along and kind of guides this program, our assurance program. And this is a little bit about the Kantara Identity Assurance Framework. We have the work group that Andrew spearheads, and he leads everything about developing what our standards are, and we make sure everything is aligned with NIST 863. If there's a question that comes up, as he mentioned, we handle that within there. And then we have a separate group of the Assurance Review Board. This is a group of 5 gentlemen throughout different parts of the industry. Some are in education, higher ed, assessors, a little bit of everything. So they're the ones who look at the systems, but the work that we do with the Assurance Review Board and the Identity Assurance Work Group all kind of come together to make our assurance framework. So our U.S. program, our 863.3 U.S. Vendor Conformance, it is a third-party assessment performed by a Kantara accredited assessor, so they have their own kind of system they go through to get Kantara approved to be assessors. And then we have the evaluation and approval by our Assurance Review Board, who was part of that group on the last slide. And then once you prove that you have conformed to the NIST 863 standards through our guidelines, you are issued a Kantara Trust Mark, which is for a 3-year cycle. So kind of what that means is in the first year, you do a full triennial assessment where your assessor looks at your full system from beginning to end. That might be an IAL or an AAL, or it might be both. We look at all of that. So you do a triennial assessment for the first year, and then in years 2 and 3, you just do a annual conformity review, and really that's kind of a spot check. Anything new, those kind of things get looked at. So annually, the whole system is getting looked at and getting approved by our Assurance Review Board and signed off from our executive director. And then only every 3 years do you start the whole big process over again. So again, I'm the Assurance Review Board. I'm the Assurance Program Manager in the U.S. The email address there kind of goes to me. I'm also down in the Expo Hall all week and happy to answer any questions about the assurance program. But we also have another assurance program that has some similarities and is a little bit newer for Kantara, and that's the UK.
Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay is the woman in the know. She's the person to see if you have any questions about any of this. So as Andrew mentioned, we have connections globally, and we are an accredited certification body in the UK. And I really think that because of our strong presence and the work that Kantara does here in the US, the UK government invited us to participate in their digital identity and attributes trust framework about 2 years ago. And so it's a very similar process, right? So we have accredited auditors. You don't get to just use anyone that you want. They are really required to meet some very specific things, requirements and certifications before they can do audits for us. That's true in the US and in the UK. Those audits are then conducted based on what is the UK scheme, which is a little bit of NIST and a little bit of ISO. It's kind of a combination, but very focused still on digital identity, which is an area, obviously, that Kantara has expertise. And there are other certification bodies in the UK, as opposed to in the US, where really Kantara is about the only group that is doing those kinds of certifications. In the UK, there are a couple of other organizations. You might have heard of the British Standards Institute, by example. But those folks don't have the expertise in digital identity that we do, and they acknowledge that. In fact, I've been on many a call in which the BSI person says, if Kay hasn't talked yet, I want to know what she thinks. So that's just because they're newer to that area. We also have a trust certification board, which is part of our checks and balances, just like in the U.S. In the U.S., we actually have an advisor from NIST. We have a federal person that also just makes sure to help us maintain that, again, quality assurance, checks and balances that we are meeting the NIST standard. We don't have quite the same participation from the government in the UK, but in the UK, the government really owns the scheme and manages all those requirements and does all of that, which in the US is Kantara now, working in partnership and in collaboration. The Trust Certification Board looks at what the auditor's done, what they've reviewed, what their testing has shown, makes a determination if they think that they should be certified to meet the DIATF, and then a trust mark is issued. This is a relatively new program for the UK, and so right now they are doing a 2-year cycle, as opposed to 3 years. 3 years would be a more traditional ISO type of review cycle. And for now, they have done 2 years, first for a full assessment, and then the second year is a surveillance audit. Just a couple of other things to know about this. Because of our expertise, we've been invited to be a certification body in other areas that are emerging for the UK, and I expect, based on what you've heard here, that we will see those kinds of things coming to the US. So, for example, when John was talking about mobile credentials, so the UK government is looking to institute another type of audit scheme around what they're calling holder services, which are mobile credentials or mobile driver's licenses. That will be coming probably in the next year, although I sort of feel like all bets are off now that they're having a general election because a lot of things are now on hold. So I might have predicted something time-wise that I'm reluctant to say now. We'll see what happens. But I think that is still on the table, and they're moving that direction. Just this past week, I met with the United Kingdom Accreditation Service and several other folks talking about a new scheme that they also want to introduce, which is on ISO 42001, which is all about artificial intelligence management systems and doing credential checks for that. So they're looking to us for that kind of leadership. I think the fact that our work groups are working in these areas, it's amazing how much that gets noticed and recognized, but we're being invited to the table, certainly on many things in the UK and other parts of the world as well. As Andrew mentioned, we're in discussions with the Singapore government, with Thailand and Vietnam and Australia, and the list goes on, right, all over the world. And it really is a lot because of this kind of work that we're doing and the expertise that we have. And I think our ability to stay true to the integrity of the programs, to make sure that what we're doing is rigorous, has meaning, and is fair at the same time. So that's the UK program, and we're happy to talk about that as well, although I'm sure many of you are interested in the US program, which is definitely Lindsay. I don't know if there's anything else that you all want to add. We do have a table. Remember, we're a tiny nonprofit, so it's not going to be very fancy compared to some of the other exhibits there, but we would love for you to come talk to us. We're in booth 2118.
Which is right by the food table.
Yes, well, I think we think it likely is. Last year, I don't know why we keep being set next to the food, but it's all good.
No, because we asked you this year, because it's, that's where everyone is.
That's right. So when you get your food, come on over and stop and talk to us. Did you want to say anything else, Andrew? Well, because you're the...
If you're interested in finding out more, obviously, come up and chat. Any questions? We'll run the mic around. But if you're intrigued in what's going on, we do have that Thursday session, and we're happy to talk about pretty much.
Thanks, Andrew. I actually have a question for you. My name's Gareth Narayan Singh. I'm with the Open Identity Exchange. Many of our members who represent the buy side of the market are really confused about what they hear with regard to deepfakes, biometrics, liveness detection. We've got many vendors out there in the market who will claim that their stuff really protects and guards against deepfakes. The IDR&D, FaceTech, iProve, just some of those names. Our members don't really know what to believe and how to differentiate between the different services. Is the work that you're doing going to, in some way, going to demystify that, either through data or science?
Data and science. What we're doing is, like I mentioned, curating the common set of facts. That's the concept we're working on. We're very strenuously being vendor neutral. So vendors have a voice, absolutely. I'm the VP of Global Standards at FaceTech, and our stuff is obviously the best. I mean, it's everyone knows that. We smooth out the differences there. So we're highlighting different technologies, different approaches, because the vendors believe that their stuff is the best and is the next thing, which is perfectly fine. We don't want to have one answer because there isn't one answer. The anticipation is, so two answers for you. First is the body of knowledge itself will be useful once it's being presented out into audiences. So members of the group are taking that material, creating presentations, presenting them, and then feeding it back into the group. They're presenting to the audiences they have. So instead of having this big database of documents that no one's ever going to look at, we're getting the material presented out in the field. So next week at EIC, I'm presenting using that material. This morning, I did a remote conference presentation using that material. So my presentations are going back into the mix. Sort of like a machine learning model, if you want to look at it like that. And then what comes next? Certification according to requirements. So that's way down the line from where your members are right now. So that's, when things have settled out more, we'll be able to certify. But the explanatory material, the outreach that happens between now and certification will start to help. We should talk later about how we can collaborate. Because with FIDO Alliance, we're already doing that, combining with their deepfakes group, like their biometric certification, because we don't do the same work, right? They're doing lab testing. We're aiming at process and practice certification. They go together really, really well, but we need to sort of figure out where we're at, and so we're liaised with them to jointly figure that out. Was that an okay answer?
I also wanted to add, changing the subject, but you see on the slide we talk about understanding U.S. government contracting vehicles, and I haven't asked permission, but I'd really like to introduce you to someone that we work very closely with, have partnered with, and have really, frankly, opened up our systems for them to sort of, what's the word? Look under the hood for how it is what we do the certification program, how we run things, and what kinds of checks and balances we have in terms of quality assurance, but also our security and all of that. And that is, we've worked very closely with India Donald. Can you wave your hand or something? India is fantastic. She is with GSA. And I don't have any special announcement here, but...
And she's never coming to your presentations ever again.
Oh, stop! India knows I love her. So... it's true. And but this week at some point will be a special item number schedule coming out from GSA, which will be very much for credential service providers and offers a way to contract with federal agencies for credential services. And there are some things that you would need to hoops to step through, but one of the things would be to go through the Kantara Assurance Program. And that is a way that you can get yourself on that schedule if you're interested in doing any kind of government contracts. And India, I'm sure, is going to be around, and I hope that, she won't hate me forever. But she's really a fantastic source of information. She's incredibly helpful. And we've been really appreciative of our ability to work with GSA. So that's coming this week. Anyway, we're in booth 2118, as I mentioned. We're kind of on the side wall where the food tables will be, and I really hope that you'll come and talk to us. And there'll be various members of the board, some of these folks and some other folks involved with Kantara who will likely be at the table. So I hope you'll come and chat with us. And there's a lot of opportunities, and we would really invite you to join and consider being a part of some of these exciting initiatives. And as there are more new and emerging topics out there, we're always looking to focus some of our work groups on what's important to the field, what's important in the marketplace. So we would love to hear your innovative ideas as well. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.